and all. Welcome to Leaders Connect 360. Leaders Connect 360 is CSR initiative by Visa Training and organized by the Mask Leadership. My name is Yugandhar, currently working in Everest IMS Technologies as Manager HR. Leaders Connect 360 started with specific objective of inviting 1,000 plus leaders and create a million leaders. A hybrid model leadership community where every Wednesday from 6:30 p.m. to 7:15 p.m. we learn from top management leaders on Zoom Live. And once in 3 months in each city, we have an offline networking meet to network, support, grow with the leaders. That's when we call as leaders create more leaders. Currently, all are muted, and we will be giving you an opportunity to speak to our guest, Mr. Viral Trivedi, Director Software Development at Oracle. But before that, let me also share that we are currently live on LinkedIn, and this episode LC087 is being recorded. For the visitors who are joining the first time, you may also click on the WhatsApp, Facebook, and LinkedIn link on the chat box to get updates on weekly basis and join us in creating more leaders. Also, we request all our members, visitors to turn on your videos, which help us in making the episode highly interactive. So, are we all ready to interact with our guest, Viral Trivedi, Director Software Development at Oracle, on the topic of virtual honesty? Then please type S in the chat box. That's great. That's great. So thank you. Before the introduction of the guest, let me also take the privilege to introduce founder of the Leaders Connect, Mr. Prakash Sharma, who will have introduction with our guest along with the panel discussion leader.
Thank you very much, Yugandhar, for the quick introduction. So welcome all the leaders. Welcome Mr. Viral Trivedi, our guest of honor. And it's nice that you've been with us here today on the specific topic, brutal honesty. So we're going to go more deeper insights about brutal honesty, and more people are joining in, will understand more. So great, Yugandhar. Thanks very much for a quick intro. With this, we'll also have a deeper introduction about Mr. Viral Trivedi, and then and also about our panel discussion leader, Ms. Renuka. Thanks, Renuka, for joining us today and taking up the role of being a panel discussion leader to be along with Mr. Viral Trivedi. Yeah. So now is where a quick video we will be sharing to introduce the professional experience of Mr. Viral Trivedi and Renuka, and then we start our episode for the evening. Over to you, Arul, for the video. Thank you all, and let's try to welcome Mr. Viral Trivedi and Ms. Renuka, and welcome Mr. Viral.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Prakash, Yugandhar, Arul, and Renuka. I think it's a great opportunity to share our learnings and learn from each other really. So thanks a lot.
Thanks, Mr. Viral, for that, and welcome Renuka.
Thank you. Yes, Prakash, thank you so much. It's a privilege to be here, actually.
Always. Thanks very much. We all, as in fact Viral said, we all learn from each other. That's really true, Viral. A week after week, that's what keeps happening here in Leaders Connect. So none than more, let's all are here for understanding what is this context on brutal honesty. We all are aware about honesty and brutal honesty. That's when people are there. So before leaving the panel to our panel discussion leader, Mr. Renuka, we also want to share all the members and visitors. We are going to share the link IDs of Mr. Viral and Renuka as well as the chat box. Feel free to stay connected with them. And then is where now we'll have the complete interaction about what this brutal honesty is all about. Post which we'll have a quiz. And we also welcome our author of the week, Mr. Akshay, where we'll be sharing a short stint about his book today. And finally, we'll have open questions from all the leaders. So people who are going to have any questions, keep them at the end and we will be having it. Great. So with that note, over to you, Renuka, for a quick discussion along with Mr. Viral on the specific topic, brutal honesty.
Thank you once again, Prakash ji, and warm good evening to Mr. Trivedi.
Thank you. Good evening.
So it's great having you over on Mask Leadership. We are all delighted here. And to start the evening with active interaction, we would like to have some insights from you. May I seek certain clarifications and questions which will take the discussion forward?
Sure.
Can I?
Yes, please.
Yes. The first question will be, what is the difference between being brutally honest and being honest?
Okay, so I think let's start with let me take a step back and let's understand what honesty is. And if you look at really a dictionary meaning of honesty, that would be something like someone is truthful, sincere, free of deceit, someone is just trying to be what they are. Now that's really more of theoretical meaning of honesty, right? But in practical world, it's pretty amorphous, right? I mean, it's not something that you can clearly define with clear boundaries. And if you were to look at on a practical terms, you would say it's it's your true or unbiased assessment of a situation or a condition that you are in. Now, if you try to break this kind of further, right? What the honesty really is all about, it's about when you say it's individual to all of us, right? It's not a common all across. What it then says is unbiased, right? Where it's completely real truth or the truth. And third thing that if you look at it, it's kind of an assessment. And if you look at all these three words, it kind of means that it's not something that is like one thing which you can identify. It's kind of slightly subjective. And it's like honesty has quite different flavors. I mean, let's come to brutal honesty later, but it's just about talking about honesty. What this brings on table is is like my honesty and your honesty in any conversation. You can look at the perspective that I have, which I call it as my honesty, and your perspective, which is is your honesty. And while this may look like a little difficult to digest, but if I'll give you a couple of examples actually. I mean, a simplistic and maybe more an extreme example is if you look at a thief who is deprived of a lot of things, has for him the honesty is to get the resources that he's looking for. He doesn't care how he's getting. He's snatching from people, but that's what his honesty is. Versus a common man who would believe that it's a stealing, which is not an honest thing to happen. But that's an extreme example. Let's come back to more realistic or something that happens in a day-to-day world. And for that, let me tell you a brief story. I had this team. We had this engineering team. We were developing a product, And we had a prospective customer whom we were trying to woo quite a lot. So we had this meeting set up with our sales folks. So we had a sales rep, we had a sales director, we had our engineering team sitting together, and we had this brilliant customer who understood, who had a pretty good insight in terms of technical details of it. So that's why we kind of were brought into the discussion. And the sales rep started really talking about product in a great sense, talking about this all features are supported and this is how it works and it's kind of best of breed product and stuff like that. And then he came to performance because customer was very keen, actually one of the big telecom operator today. And the customer had a pretty high requirement in terms of performance. And then the sales rep started throwing big numbers, this is what it is, this is what it's capable of. And at the same time, the engineer sitting beside me, he was like, what this guy is talking about him, and whatever he's talking is pure rubbish. And I wouldn't go to where the deal ended and all that. Let's keep that aside. But after the call, we just had a brief discussion within the team to look at what are the next step with the sales team. And really the sales rep and the engineer, they're really fighting. The engineer says you are not honest, you are telling numbers which does not make sense. And on the other side, the sales rep says you don't understand the sales language, you don't know which environment we live in, what our competitors are doing. And compared to that, I have been really honest and I have been telling the customer what we really can make out of our product. So now here's an example, right? And this can I can take this even further. If you have one single team, you may have one person who is very creative and one person is very process oriented. And if you ask them the status of their work, they would give very different perspective. And now would you call them as one of them is dishonest or one of them is honest? Not really. So this is where I wanted to kind of bring this concept of things like my honesty versus your honesty. And so it's not really something that we can compare with each other, but it's really something that we can compare more within ourselves, right? I mean, am I honest with what I believe in? Am I honest with what I understand as an assessment of that particular situation? And am I really honest to what I believed? And am I really honestly talking about or passing that information out to whoever it is, right? So the first and the foremost aspect of honesty is really when we keep talking about it, I'm honest to you, or actually it's more about we being honest to ourselves, our thoughts, our understanding, and talking about it, communicating it. I think that's really the most important aspect about the honesty. And then the other aspect, what Renuka talked about brutal honesty. So then, you start looking at that degree of honesty, and the way I kind of have built a model around it is, sometimes you have certain specific views about honesty, about certain things, and that's really the honesty for yourself. But then when you are in some conversation, you're talking to several people who have a different way of interpreting it, different way of understanding it. You try to kind of keep it to a level where the where your team, where the others would probably understand it better. And that's where I call it kind of level of honesty. And if we are really brutally talking about exactly what you believe in, or actually what you think about, then I would consider that as a brutal honesty. So that's where I think the difference is between honesty and brutal honesty. Hope I answered your question, Renuka.
Yes, sir. Wonderful it was. And can we go for the second one?
Yes, please.
In today's corporate context, is it really important to be brutally honest in workplace? What is your opinion on this?
So, I think, all of you may have heard this term called leading with authenticity, right? And that comes from actually the honesty, right? I mean, and authenticity is not just about, leading a firm, leading a financial firm with authenticity to be able to build a brand, avoiding frauds and stuff, scams and all that. But it's all about, building team, building people around it who see you as honest. And that's where the authentic leadership comes in, where there is an authenticity by a leader himself, and that kind of percolates down. So I think it's a very, very good question in the current environment where, in a corporate context, it's very important to be honest and to be brutally honest. If you go a little further down, though, you can be brutally honest in practically couple of cases. I mean, brutally honest, right? One is where you don't really care about the outcome of a situation. So, you just, talk your heart out and, tell exactly what you believe in. Or the other possibility is where you exactly believe that what you are going to talk about or what you're going to behave is something that your partner, your friend, your I mean in the corporate world would really be able to understand it, and you can communicate it. So to me, both are kind of not that very realistic, right? In a corporate world, you always look for outcomes and what results are out there for us. So those are probably not that very practical environment. And so it's really important to kind of have a discussion where you start looking at what level of while you are honest to yourself, you are brutally honest about your thoughts and your understanding, but at the same time based on the conversation that you have, do you really want to communicate in exactly the same sense? So brutally honest is extremely important as part of corporate world. But even more important, I would say, is being brutally honest in terms of intent, and particularly in the corporate world, where your intent for a particular business decision, or intent as part of a particular just one-on-one, let's say, simplistic way. I think that is a piece where brutal honesty comes as a very critical and very important aspect during a day-to-day business. But as I started with that, right, I think without honesty, without the brutal honesty, I think in corporate world, you cannot lead with authenticity. You do not find people to follow you, people to take the organization further. You cannot see people following you towards making the organization and corporate successful. So that's kind of given. But when you talk about degree of that, honesty in terms of, brutally honest, that's where as a leader, it kind of drives more towards, towards the intent. And subjectively, you look at where do you play, which level of, what level of communication you would do. I would also want to add a little bit in terms of brutal honesty is, it's really about, it's not, when I say, you start looking at that honesty and that degree of honesty, I do not mean that you start manipulating it, but it's really about that, with the conversation you have with, your stakeholder, you start to kind of judge that, whether this kind of brutal honesty in your discussion, will it be appreciated, forget about appreciated, will it be understood in the right sense. And that is where, it's very important that you start judging it and communicate at a level which is well understood and, taken up in a right spirit. Otherwise, you're just going to have more challenging conversations going forward without any reason, just because of the difference. So that's how I would, say that how the brutal honesty is useful in corporate environment. Renuka?
Renuka, please go ahead.
Yes. No, I was unmuted.
Yeah.
I was muted actually.
Yes.
Okay. So I'll go ahead. That's really amazing, sir. Your answer was. Now I'll go for the third question. That is, honest feedback for certain customers and team members can be tremendously helpful. However, when we share certain improvement areas, there is certain level of non-acceptance from customers and team members. How do we handle this?
Okay, so yeah, I think I think let me start with this, right? I think it is by design, right? I mean, when you talk about possible area of improvements or things to be done better, right? It's probably human psychology, right? I think we all have our own inertia. We all, in our own sense, believe that based on the circumstances that I was in, I have done the best to my abilities. So that's where we all start, right? We all human beings, and we start from there. And so what happens is that this disagreement or not agreeing to the feedback, is probably very natural for most of us. I would say very few who would probably accept it. But on the other side, as a leader, I think, I think we should understand that this is by design. This is how it would be. I mean, I have seen today as well, a lot of folks going into a performance review discussion, and, as a leader, and, when employee does not accept it, and when they kind of take it as, why don't you accept what I'm telling you? And I think this is where we need to kind of change the way we look at it. It's very likely that they wouldn't, and there's a right reason for it. I mean, if we were, if you look at from their perspective, it is always that they have some reason and some perspective. So number one is, I think, it is by design, and number two, I think, is we should recognize that there is going to be difference in terms of, how they look at it as a improvement areas, right? It's extremely important that we recognize it, we accept it, that, there will be difference. And if we really do that, then the conversation becomes much more simpler, much more easier, and, you don't get into this ego of, I told you, and why don't you agree that this is an area of improvement for you. Now, coming back to your second question, I think it was all about that how do we work with team to handle this? How do we make it even better? So I think I have some three, four ideas around it. I think how we kind of take this forward. Now, in the context of the brutal honesty, right? I think it's very important that we pitch the discussion at a level which is well understood, and I would say rightly understood, by a stakeholder, right? I mean, it's like I give you the example, if you have a sales guy talking to a hardcore engineer, just number crunching guy, or let me give you an example, like the process engineer who is like very process oriented, and he talks to another engineer who is very creative, right? It's not going to work that easily unless they find a common wavelength to talk to each other. And similarly, there are managers, and there are managers who are more generalist, versus there are managers who are very task oriented. And similarly, you have an employee who can be on either sides. And the same example applies to customer as well, right? So it's more different individualistic people, right? So it's very important that as a leader, and we being a leader, we need to understand where the other person stands, or approximately where the other person stands. So I think first and foremost is, while giving that feedback, I think it's very important to pitch our discussion at a level which is going to be well understood, and can be taken up with openness by a stakeholder. So that's for me is number one. Second thing is, really it really comes out about empathy. Now, I mean, either you call it empathy, or it's about how you communicate it, right? It's probably the most important of all aspects, when particularly we are having conversation about areas of improvement, or how we make things better, and whether it's customer, whether it's our employee discussion, or any discussion for that matter. The way words are selected, the way the tone that we kind of talk to, makes a lot of difference. And let me give you some example, right? I mean, you would say, why did you screw this up? And the same thing can be asked in a sense that, what could have done better, right? These are two similar sounding question, but have a very different meaning and very different perspective that would, come from your stakeholder. Similarly, you can say, why did you do it? And, second thing is, you can ask that, what affected you that, you did it. And there are many examples I could go on for some time, but, I think this is another area which I think we should, as a leaders, we should work ourselves to be able to, consciously ensure that we have this connect, particularly when we are talking about this area of improvements, or, we are providing the brutally honest feedback. Third thing probably would be, more of, understand and explain, and, we understand the stakeholder, and, explain ourselves, of where we are coming from. How does a particular team members areas of improvement affects business, right? How do we bring that connection from there all the way to till up, or either ways, right? I mean, that's really important. And along with it, I think, some amount of examples of, what would have, changed the way the business outcome was. What was that was missing that impacted the business outcome, right? So I think that, connecting, and I completely agree that sometimes it's not very easy because, and a team members, area of improvement, linking that to all the real outcome is not that very easy. But at the team outcome, it is probably much easier. So, if you can connect that as part of the discussion, I think that helps a great deal. But last and not the least, but this is really the most important thing. I think that, focusing on an improvement area from a perspective of, how it adds value for the team member, I think that's really the most important. And this is actually even more valid from a customer perspective when we are having a discussion with customer rather than a team member, where if we can articulate, how person to how changing the way of working, or taking this feedback positively and constructively working on it, how that's going to change the team member, change the customer, change the whole stakeholder, and change the relationship as well. And how it's going to kind of open his mind for much broader growth, and on what on what kind of path he or she could go with recognizing that area of improvement and working through that. I think that is probably the most, single most important way for us to be able to communicate this area of improvement. And if that is well understood, really, I don't think there is anything else needed for for us to pass that message very strongly to our stakeholders. So I think I would say these are the areas that I would consider as something that we should work when we kind of providing feedback. Yeah.
Yes, sir. That was really great. And one last question. You partly answered this, but then again, let us have a brief answer for this. That is, why do you think people lie? How do we bring the courage within them? Kindly share your views or your experiences with the team on similar situation.
Okay, so why do people lie? I think I would say fundamentally, there are again, I would say 3-4 reasons why would a team member lie. First and foremost, and this is probably the simplest one to handle, is lack of performance. I think it's obvious, and I don't think I want to articulate that more. If there is a lack of performance, if the team member is not able to do his or her assigned job for competency reasons, there is a very high probability that he or she would possibly lie. But that's a case which I think if there's a competency gap, there are different ways. Every organization has certain way of handling it, and I think that should be handled that way. But there are other aspects, for example, comparisons or expectations, right? I mean, I expect myself to be doing really great, and I'm not doing great, and why don't I just say something, and possibly some of it will go through and some of it may not go through, but end of the day, I may get better either financial rewards or whatever growth opportunities, right? So that's another one. And I think this comparisons is really killing, I think, the next generation, and something as today's leader, we really need to be aware of it, because I wouldn't call the current, the latest generation, but if you look at 5-10 years ago, people had this lot of comparisons of why I'm not doing great, and why XYZ person is doing great, and stuff like that, right? And third set of, or maybe the more fundamental reason of people lying, I would consider is kind of fear. And end of the day, it's all about fear. It's about fear of losing out, fear of missing out FOMO, or fear of missing some financial gains, fear of missing my own personal ego, for that matter, right? So these are I would say these 3 are the real drivers that would drive a team member to to lie, or to kind of I would say make up things, right, which may not be right. And I think to answer a question in terms of some examples or views about how do we handle it. So one thing that from a lack of performance perspective, I think, coming back to the discussion point, right, I think honesty and brutal honesty, I think, is even more important when you're talking about, lack of performance, right? For any reason. I mean, it's very important, and I would even add like timely, honest communication. I think that is the bare minimum thing that we should be doing it. And if we do that as a leaders, I think we are broadly done. There are team members who would take this positively and move on, and there are things whom we probably have to kind of have them look at something different, something of their own interest. uh, there is another one which is about this comparisons and expectation wise. I think we as leaders need to build environment where the fail fast approach is recognized and it is taken positively. I think what happens today is if there's a failure, as leaders as well, we take it as no man, there's a failure, and we take it as negative. But failing fast so that you get up the next day and start on something else, some other approach, some other design, some other way of working. I think that kind of environment, that kind of culture that we need to bring, I think that is extremely important. uh, and just to kind of end this with there's this virtuous cycle and the vicious cycle. And team member who is basically lying is kind of very much in a state where he or she is in vicious cycle, where it has been like successive failures that is kind of taking him or her to a level where he or she doesn't have any other option but to kind of lie and make up things. So as a coach, as a mentor, I think what has worked for me is even if he is supposed to do something at a high level, give him or her a smaller piece of work which you think that he can do it, and then keep slowly growing that work, that scope of work. What it does is kind of builds the confidence or courage, as kind of he gets out of that virtuous vicious cycle to virtuous cycle of starting to test the success, slowly gradually growing up and doing even more. And what you would see is that a task you would have given in an otherwise environment, he would have failed. But if you take a team member through this cycle, what you would see is that he has come up with so much of confidence with smaller tasks, 10, 15 smaller tasks, that the same task he or she would be able to do successfully. So hand holding a team member to get him out of this vicious cycle to a virtuous cycle of success. I think that is a really key. But yeah, of course, that requires that you have a confidence in the team member that he's technically able, he is competent, and it's just about attitude, or just about getting out of that phase. So those are my take on how you get a team member who is lying, get him out of that phase of failures, I would say.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. It was quite insightful, and I'm sure everyone will leverage these examples.
Sure, thank you.
Over to you, Prakashji.
Great. Thank you very much, Renuka, for taking up the role of a panel discussion leader and asking those questions. And thanks very much, Viral. That was really great. And then happy to listen to your insights as you're sharing the last, why do people lie? On one side, we have, which you told about the fear factor. On the other side, you have the courage. And one thing which I really like is fail fast. So even failures, accept the failure, fail fast. And the other side is creating the kind of a courage in a person. And from moving from the journey of fail fast to creating the courage will happen through your topic, which have actually created brutal honesty. Moving from fail fast to creating courage, that's when the journey itself, the more and more we are honest, the more and more we are actually becoming brutally honest, this journey is much fastly achieved. But wonderfully shared your views, your insights, your experiences have been come out in this episode. Really great, Veer. So members and visitors, thank you. So members and visitors, in fact, let me share, Viral, we got connected through LinkedIn early, and so generous of them that he really wanted to come up and taking up this really episode. That's really so humble of you, Viral, and we're really great that you have joined us for our episode today.
Thank you. It's pleasure actually, and I mean, like you said, I learned in your last few sentences as well. So yeah, I think it's all about sharing learnings with each other, and helping all of us grow with our brutal and honesty.
Rightly said. So thanks very much, Viral. So Viral, just in 2 minutes, so we will be take a small quiz, and we'll have an author of the week also will introduce. Then we'll come back to open questions, so people can ask you any open questions as well. Yeah. So just give us 2 minutes. So members and visitors, now is the time for the quiz, the introduction of our author of the week, and open questions to all our leaders, which will be Viral Trivedi, Renuka, as well as Mr. Akshay, who is the author of the week. So stay tuned, and if you have open questions in the meantime, you have 2 ways to share. Either you can raise your hand and we give you an unmute option, and then you can share your question openly, or you can write your question in the chat box and then we can take it up. But all this after the quiz and the author of the week introduction only. So keep them ready, and then we will take it up. So now is the time for a small quiz, and for conducting the quiz and announcing the last week's quiz winner initially, and then later doing the quiz for this week, I would request Ms. Archana Sriram as a part of conducting the quiz leader. Over to you, Archana, for taking the quiz.
Thank you, Prakash sir. Good evening, everyone. Hope all is doing good. So now my question is going to be in the chat box. Please keep the chat box open and ready. And this is going to be based on the interaction which we had right now. So he said a particular statement at the very beginning, and we have a small question based on that. So it's going to be a true and false question, very simple one. And the question is going to be in the chat box. I'll also read, and then you have A and B option. So please select which one is the right one. You may either mention as false or true, or you mention as A or B. That's up to you. So my question is now coming on the count of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. You can be brutally honest in the corporate environment when you know that your partner or the person to whom you're speaking to will be able to understand what you're going to talk about or the intention behind it. A is false, B is true. So we have Rajiv who is saying the first one. B, okay, you get so okay. This time people are very, very fast. Good. That's good. Keep coming in. Good. So we have some 4 responses alone till now. So low. We have so many participants. Okay, people are coming. Good. All right. So the correct answer is it is true. That is B, option B. So majority everybody has given the right answer, but the first one who gave the right one, according to me, my screen here, it is Rajiv. I hope it is the same for you as well.
True. Yes, that's nice. It is Rajiv in our screen as well.
Yes. So congratulations, Rajiv, for getting the answer right.
Great. Wonderful. Congratulations, Rajiv. Congratulations, Rajiv, for being the quiz winner.
Thank you. Thank you.
Pleasure, Rajiv. Thanks very much for taking it up quickly with fastest fingers first. Great. So Rajiv will be getting a book from the author of the week today, Mr. Akshay. So last week's quiz winner, let's share it first on the screen, and then we take it up for this week's quiz winner, as well as the author of the week. Last week's quiz winner is Dr. Vasanthi Jason. She gets the Mass Leadership 360-degree assessment tool as complimentary, where she did participate in the quiz and was the first right answer. So congratulations, Dr. Vasanthi Jason. That's really awesome, and thanks very much for joining us today as well. And now, congratulations, Rajiv, for getting the author of the book, which is Mr. Akshay's book today. So what's the book all about, and what is Akshay book? So now is the time where I'll be introducing the author of the week as well now. So Mr. Akshay, we welcome you, Mr. Akshay, for the Leaders Connect platform, and thanks for joining us. I request you to kindly turn on your video where people will be able to see you as well. In the meantime, let me quickly give a short intro of Mr. Akshay, so that people are aware about our author. Mr. Akshay Sharma is an Indian author, screenwriter, and an actor in the Tamil film industry. Mr. Sharma graduated in Electrical and Electronics Engineering from the Info Institute of Engineering affiliated to Chennai University, Coimbatore. He started his career as an engineer, but left it in few years to pursue his writing. He has written Hindi dialogues for Tamil film Undercover Sleeper Cells in 2020, and a web series for an American production house in 2021. So today his book is all about the flying dreams. That's his book, The Flying Dreams, and which has been the bestsellers in the authors arena as well as in Amazon. So he's also a motivational speaker and has done for 30 plus organizations, many more. So great. So we welcome you, Akshay, for our Leaders Connect entity. Mr. Akshay, over to you for giving a short brief about your book. Mr. Arul, is Akshay?
He's raised his hand.
Yeah, he raised his hand. I think there is a problem in unmuting. Just
Please go ahead, check it.
checking.
Yeah. So in the meantime, I will check in the back end with Mr. Akshay so that he's
Yes.
able to join us and help him. And as it goes, we'll also share Mr. Akshay's book link on the respective chat box. People can also get his book, The Flying Dreams. So in the meantime, Akshay is coming, and then back with his technology, I would say challenge. So let's take up the open questions to Mr. Viral, and then we start ahead with Akshay as well, once again, introduction. So members and visitors, and now it's time for open questions to Mr. Viral. So please go ahead, and then we give an option to unmute you, and then we can ask the questions to Mr. Viral. So people, you can raise your hands, or you can also ask your questions in the chat box as well, so that we'll be able to take your questions on your behalf if you would wish to write them on the chat box as well. So Viral, I have a question. Now, as this conversation was going and I was listening to a couple of examples, there's an incident which has happened now. The people are honest. There is an incident which has happened to one of our clients' place. The people are honest, and honestly, they go share it to the top management. They had admitted the mistake. Once they've admitted the mistake, the top management agrees. But then after a period of time, they say that's unethical, and they ask the person to leave the company. So now, one side, the question is very simple. One side, the courage grows when the person is able to tell honestly and accept his mistake. The courage is coming. But the other side, when the non-acceptance happens and he is asked to leave the company, again the confidence dies. So how do you think this should be really been managed?
Yeah, so okay, thanks for unmuting me. Yeah, I think this is a typical dilemma that you call it honesty dilemma, right? Where and it's not really about in this environment, but many environments where you try to follow certain of your belief, and you don't get the results that you are looking forward to. So I think my approach on this is you have to look at it. I mean, there's a saying in corporate world that you go 2 layer up compared to where you are, and if that leader is not able to appreciate or understand your perspective, your honesty really, then it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense going further up, right? You go your level up and then 1 layer up, and that is probably a more I would say proactive and better way of dealing with it. So you go space by, because end of the day, and of course it doesn't mean that you continue to stay in the organization, but you find your ways out. There is absolutely no point if the the organization. So I think again one other thing that I wanted to really call out was every organization has their own value system, culture, and stuff like that. And if you are not aligning it to it, it's probably not a right place for you, right? So you try enough to work through that. But if it doesn't work out, and that's what I say is go through that 2 levels, be honest, share your feedback. Again, the how part is important, and how you share it rather than I versus you. I think those are things that are still important, even as an employee, as a team member or an employee, to be able to communicate. The empathy is still important. It doesn't matter. A manager only does not need to have empathy, or leader. I mean, as a matter of fact, we all are leaders, right? So those things are important as we have that conversation. But yeah, after 2 layers, if it doesn't work, then you better understand that this is not the place where I want to kind of try more, and I would rather find an organization which aligns with my value system, my honesty, my culture, and kind of find something of that sort. I mean, that would be my approach.
Wonderful, wonderfully shared. That means major is we need to be right fit into the company's culture. And the more, our value system is individual and the company's value system needs to align. And the more it is aligned, it adds more value. And wonderfully shared, and it doesn't align, purpose actually gets away. That's when people leave to be.
Yes. And I think, just to add a little bit, nothing will align 100%, right? I mean, like brutal honesty, right? There is nothing like 100% truth, right? I mean, but it has to be aligned, like you rightly pointed out. So I think it's important that it should be aligned, and we should work towards aligning as much as possible, because sometimes our compass may not be right. I think so. It's not that you leave on the day one, but try aligning your compass, see if does it work, and then work through the process. Yeah.
Wonderful. Great, Viral. Thanks for sharing that. That's awesome answer. And then we made to understand how culture is also important for us to be brutally honest. Needs to understand the culture, in fact, first. Great. So I believe David is having a question. But David, can we take the question after the author of the week's introduction? Introduction I've done, but we can do that. Thanks, David. That helps a lot. And Mr. Akshay is back and in the form. Thanks very much, Mr. Akshay Sharma. I believe you're able to unmute yourself now. All set?
Hello, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Thank you very much, Akshay, for joining us in. And nice to see you. And then you've been a bestseller author as well. And then the Flying Dreams is your book. So we'd like to know in short stint about what this Flying Dreams is all about and how the journey of being bestseller in 2 minutes is part of it. So please go ahead, Akshay.
So, hey everyone. So this is Akshay Sharma. I'm the author of the book, The Flying Dreams. And this book is all about, achieving dreams. As you know that we, somehow we miss out our dreams because generally, we don't catch hold of it. So that is why, this book is called as Flying Dreams, because our dreams keep flying. But coming to this book, it's a psychological thriller, because I have to write it in a sense that, it is a story attracted version, so that, even college students, schools, and even parents can read this, because that's how I've written it. And this was launched way back in 2018. But before that, I was an engineer. I was working in a German company. And the day when my book got launched, I left my job. So I took up writing as my career immediately on the first day of my first book, because before that, I did not launch my other books. And now it's been it's going to complete 4 years now. And this book has given me a big journey, because this book gave me an entry level to cinema film industry. And right now I'm working with big producers, directors in a big film called Pattu Tale. It's a Tamil film, and where I've acted in that. And also I have worked in several other films also as dialogue writer, and also a musician. I'm also a musician. So I just like doing things which are more artistic way. So this is just a dream which I had, since my college days, but I couldn't take up. And I, literally went ahead with working in a professional way, like how everyone does that. And then after that, I realized that I do have a dream, then why don't I follow it? So once I followed it, and, immediately the next day when my book got released, some like around 1.5 months or 2 months, it was a journey. Then I was, presented awards for a few different categories from Kolkata, Bangalore, and so on. And then I was featured in Times of India, and based only on these features, right, I was invited by different colleges and schools, and even corporate sessions I started taking in many other organizations like Wells Fargo and so on, and even IITs. And I just went there and gave my, brief description about the book and the other things. This is how my journey has been. And it's good overall that I, tend to interact with people, and moreover, it feels good. So that's it. Yeah.
Great. Thanks very much, Akshay. It's been really inspirational to listen to your story and how you've been able to achieve your dream, and then career itself been shifted. So very few people take such steps from engineering to get into this, and you're one of them. Really proud of you, Akshay. Great, keep it up and going. Wonderful. So thanks, Akshay. So you also get an opportunity to ask any question to Mr. Viral. Please feel free. So if you have any on this back to the topic as well, and can take it forward. Else, we'll also take the other questions. Do you have any questions, Mr. Akshay, to Mr. Viral?
Yeah, the question is, how do you manage, a lot of people coming? Because, once you interview many people, because I'm just talking about the rejections. Always, people talk about, how people are inside the campus or how people are inside the working culture. What about the rejections? Because there are many people, many candidates, waiting to get the opportunity, but they are not able to get it. Because I feel only for them, because there are many unemployment. I only talk about these things now, only based on a writer basis. I just talk about these things. But how do they, then like there are many people, they have to get opportunities, right? So what are the steps taken for them? Because rejection, you shouldn't just reject it, because I've seen many people who apply for the job, but after that they don't get any response also. There are many things in this aspect of running a corporate culture. I mean, being in the corporate culture and running a company, there are many things. So that's what one thing I would like to learn, because I'm also running a publishing company. So it's just a learning. That's it.
Sure. So Akshay, thanks for the question, and congratulations for what you have achieved, and I think wish you all the best in your future endeavors. So great to know you, and I think like Prakash said, it's a courage as well to kind of shift the career like this. It's wonderful to know. Going back to your question, there are a couple of aspects, right? I think rejection is for not individual. I think rejection is for a particular role and particular competencies that a candidate is offering. So I think it's very important that all of us, and we at Oracle, we do communicate that it's not that we're rejecting a candidature, but rejecting the competencies versus the role that we have. So it's really about that. And the way we kind of articulate, and I think I would love to kind of meet some of those people and also communicate. Every interview, every rejection is a step towards success. I mean, all of us, including me, we have gone through those challenges, and then we kind of have reached to a level where we are employed, or we are doing by adding value. So every rejection, every interview where every failed, every answer that a candidate is not able to answer is also a learning. And I think it's most important for all of us to learn from it and build that value yourself. I mean, think of it, if you attend 4 or 5 rounds of interviews, and if you have learned everything that was asked thoroughly, I'm very sure that 7th or 8th or maybe 10th attempt will be successful. So the two aspects that is very important is rejection is not personal. It's for the competency that you currently possess, and more importantly, how as an engineer you start building on it, rather than looking at that rejection as a rejection, right? It's an opportunity, and how to convert that into a one better thing for you. I think those are the two perspectives that we keep sharing with our candidates whom we are to reject. And interestingly, our organization, at least, we don't really, I mean, a lot of organizations have this rule that you take an interview, and then for 1 year you don't call them for interviews again. We don't do that. We kind of give them 2-3 months, and then we are happy to have them again to evaluate. So yeah, I think but I agree on a general sense. I think there's a need for educating it, communicating messages to all the folks, and yeah, we should do that more of.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was needful.
Thanks very much, Bill, for answering, and thanks very much, Akshay, for being as our author of the week. And I shared maybe your book as one of complimentary for the quiz winner today, Mr. Rajiv. Correct? So we can give it as complimentary. So congratulations, Rajiv, for getting the book Flying Dreams. And you know what, Akshay? Even
Looking forward to reading Akshay's book. Looks very interesting.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
I was about to say about you only, Rajiv, saying that Rajiv is also an author. So an author to another author as well is going to go to the book. Great and excellent. Thanks very much. And congratulations, Rajiv, as well. And thanks very much, Akshay. So, Mr. Viral, I understand that's already closer to 7:30. In fact, David raised his hand for one question. Can we take one last question and we come to an end of the episode? Is it okay? Or
Sure.
do we have any? Is it
No, you're
fine?
good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, David, so you can go
Good
ahead.
evening, sir. I'm Captain David, and I won't take long because I think we are running against time. But I just wanted to say why that word brutal, brutally being honest. You know. When the subject came to me, what struck me first was Julius Caesar, Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, where Caesar tells Brutus, "E tu Brute," you know. That struck me. And secondly, when I passed out of Army Academy as an officer, one day before we pass out, there's a small lecture for 40 minutes of directing staff gifts. And that's where he said, gentlemen, be brutally honest when you're dealing with your men, whether it is attack or defense or destruction of enemy targets. So it struck me, okay, brutally being honest means absolute. So why? I mean, you could have termed it as absolutely being honest or absolutely transparently honest, right? Why that word brutal?
Yeah, so I think very well identified and a pretty well question. Good question. What brutally really means is, you are breaking your biases brutally. You have your biases, you have your lenses, right, towards seeing everything. And how can you break those lenses brutally to be really looking at the truth, right? And this is easily said than done, to be honest. I mean, I would say none of us probably would be able to do that on a day-to-day stand, but that's where the word brutally comes. Can you break your biases, the lenses, the perspectives that we have built, right? Can you build them, and can you break them brutally and be really honest? And that's where the word, I believe, came from.
Yeah, correct, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, David. It's been great. And it comes to an end of our episode. And it's an awesome episode, Viral. Thanks very much. There may be many more questions from the others. So other visitors and guests, if you have any more questions, please do share in the chat box or email it to us, and then we take them separately and send an email to Mr. Viral, and then that will be answered for you. So we just have two left out. One, maybe a quick summary. So maybe I request Mr. Nellai to quickly summarize, and then we go with the word of thanks. Bye. So yes, Mr. Nellai, a quick summary of the key pointers in that will help us all.
Good evening, all. And yeah, that on the honesty, the key points are the true, unbiased, and assessment. And the honesty, as per the perspective on each person, that is my honesty and your honesty. And the degree of honesty, and should have a clarity on what we believe in this. And we should have a leading of the authenticity. And either we should have a no outcome issues, or else we have to inform that what level are intended decisions for that. And other one is this honesty should not be no manipulation and judging and handling the situation with the belief. And the honesty can be a possible of improvement areas with the team feedback, the rightly understood, and openness by the team members, and the empathy, how we communicate, and with the examples or connecting the part of the discussion and focusing on the requirement. And why the people are people live, and the simplest option or lack of performance or compulsion or expectation and fear of losing or missing out or financial gains or personal ego. And the important one, timely, honest communication is the key message in this. And failing fast approach to be recognized by the leaders, extremely important one. And the moving from the failing fast to courage is the key message informed by the team. And courage to grow up, and whenever if we are delivering it, and we should ensure that is it in the corporate leadership, is it reaching the two layers up, and we have to treat, are we aligning with the value system, or how we are dealing it. We have to ensure that we have to create a more value by aligning the value system by ourselves as well as companies. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Great. Yeah. Thanks very much, Nellai, for sharing the quick summary. It will really help. And for the people who might have missed, kindly share the summary in the WhatsApp group. The people who have missed, they will also be able to add more value. Thank you, Nelai. And Nelai is a senior manager at Polycon India Private Limited. Thanks, Nelai, for that. And with all that, so let's go ahead with a small word of thanks and introducing about the next week. The word of thanks, I would request Mr. Saurabh Kumar Das to share the word of thanks for all. And we come to the end. Yes, Mr. Saurabh.
Am I audible? Good evening.
Yes, you are. Please go ahead, sir.
Yeah, so good evening, and it was really an engaging session. Kind of like the facilitator, the organizer. It was really, this is the second time for me. So I honestly understood what is authenticity and the entire gamut of discussions.
That's
And
nice.
totally, flip side, how people may not be honest. And as a team leader, when I had a question, I don't know whether I'll be having a time. So when you grow up in the career, being honest is sometimes tough. And sir has actually put it across the nuances in a behavioral level, how it can be really practiced to the T. And since I'm a trainer by profession, I can really connect like what is the deeper meaning of it. So that is it. Let me, before going ahead, let me say like the Leaders Connect 360 is a hybrid model of leaders community where we connect every Wednesday at 6:30 to 7:15 p.m. There is a offline networking meet on 12th November at Chennai and 10th December at Bangalore. So do meet us. It's a meet number 4. And I sincerely thank Viralji for spending his valuable time and input with this us in a forum. And I request other participants to stay back to introduce them. And thanks again to Viralji. Over to Prakash to take it over. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Saurabh. So that's really great. And we are final thank you video. And Viral, thanks very much. It was really great and awesome episode which we had. And we stay in touch, Viral, in the LinkedIn itself.
Yeah, it's really a pleasure. And as part of this, even I learned quite a bit. So really appreciate, guys. Thanks for inviting. And it's an opportunity of learning for all of us. So really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Viral. So now the thank you video for all. And after that, we have an introduction for people who like to introduce yourself and interact. You can stay back and then feel free to introduce yourself so we all know each other as well. So thank you video for all. Thanks very much, Viral. Really helps. Great. So thank you one and all. And that was an awesome episode by Mr. Trivedi. And now is the time for our quick introduction of each other, which will know each other more better in shots. So a couple of people have joined us today as well. And let's have a quick intro of all. So yeah, maybe we have